All kids love stuffed animals. But there was a certain point, if you were a boy and you brought a stuffed animal to show and tell, you might get beat up in the schoolyard. Girls had pound puppies and Care Bears. But what were those stuffed animals for boys that if you had it, you were still pretty cool? And that's what we're talking about on this list. We're going over 9 stuffed animals cool for dudes. Welcome back, guys. It's Thomas, and I thought this would be a fun topic to talk about. You know, growing up, we all had our favorite stuffed animal. Maybe it was a teddy bear. I was weird. I had a stuffed clown. But there was a certain age where if you were a boy and you were playing with stuffed animals, you might get picked on. But I'm not gonna lie, I loved plush toys. I loved getting different stuffed animals and putting them on my bed. But what were the plush toys that boys had that were actually still pretty cool? So sit back, relax, as we go through 9 of the coolest stuffed animals for dudes. Number 9 goes to My Pet Monster. This is probably one of the most universally recognized on the list, but My Pet Monster was produced by Amtoy in 1986. Amtoy was actually a subsidiary of American Greeting Cards, so the same company making those greeting cards made My Pet Monster. Now, the original monster, Monzy, had such a cool design. He had these bright purple and blue colors. He had this big bulbous nose and hard teeth and yellow eyes. Super fun. And they even came out with a whole bunch of different characters. They came out with Monzy in his football gear, and they did some other characters like Gwonk, Woostapark, Binkle, and Yaplet. One of my favorite things about My Pet Monster were the orange Velcro handcuffs that he came with. When we used to just run around and play, we would actually attach those to each other's wrist. But the stuffed animal itself was always pretty cool, and depending on when you got it, it could have been bigger than you. So this is one that I still see collectors talk about today. Loyal Subjects has reproduced a line of their own My Pet Monsters, but figured we'd start this list off with one of the most popular. At number 8, we have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle plush toys made by Playmates in 1988. These were some of my favorite plush toys that we had, and I remember having Leonardo and Raphael. So me and my brother could pretend that we were the other 2 turtles, or we can pretend like we were battling the turtles and swing them around, launch them by their shell. These particular plush toys actually made an appearance in Child's Play 3, the Chucky movie. They're at the end finale scene when they're running through the carnival, so if you look back and watch that movie, you might see them. I remember these being made in different sizes. They made versions with plungers, and people had them on their car windows throughout the years. But just to add on to what was made for plush and turtles, in 1990 there was the Pillow Pal, very similar to the Pillow Person made famous by Stephanie Tanner on Full House. So let me know down in the comments, did you have the regular plush? Did you have the Pillow Pal? Either way, both of these were super cool. At number 7, in 1993, Streetwise Designs created Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Action Pals. With the release of Power Rangers, we all wanted to be fighting alongside them, and now they made all 5 of the Rangers. They were these plush bodies with hard plastic helmets. They looked super cool, and they even made 2 versions of Tommy. You got one of him in his Green Ranger outfit, and then you got one of him in the White Ranger outfit. They did make these in 1994 again, but this time they ditched the hard plastic helmet and replaced it by making the whole entire Action Pal stuffed. But it was still so much fun, and it was just super cool if you had them all and see all those colors on the shelf. At number 6, we have the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters. This was made in 1984 by Kenner. With the Real Ghostbusters line, we never got a giant or oversized Stay Puft Marshmallow. We did get an action figure version of him, but he wasn't too much larger than the actual figures. So if you had this plush, you could probably use him as an oversized figure and then recreate the scene from the movie where they were battling him from the rooftop. So love this plush toy. It came with glow-in-the-dark eyes. Galoob eventually did make another version of the Stay Puft Marshmallow that could probably just be used as a pillow when you were done playing with it. But I think for not having an oversized figure, having the plush would have been a great substitute. And then when you're tired from playing, you can use him to fall asleep. When I was a kid, there was 2 shows that I was not allowed to watch: Married with Children and The Simpsons. But at number 5, we have the Simpson dolls produced by Burger King in 1990. Now, I mentioned that I wasn't allowed to watch this as a kid, so I think it's funny that these were actually part of the Burger King Kids Club, and they were super fun. They made the whole family, and it was a plush body with a hard plastic head, and you had Homer, Marge, Lisa, Maggie, and of course Bart. I think one of the coolest things is that each one of these plush toys came with an item tag, and they each fit the character's personality. Homer came with a bowling bag, Marge came with a purse, Lisa came with her saxophone, Maggie came with her little stuffed animal, and Bart came with his skateboard. And while we're talking about The Simpsons, there was other companies making plush toys of certain characters. There was a talking Bart. Bart said things like "ay caramba" and "eat my shorts." At number 4, we have the WWF Wrestling Buddies, produced by Tonka in 1994. Before my brother graduated of using myself to test out the new wrestling finisher, we had the Wrestling Buddies. If you were a small kid and had one of these, they were probably comparable in size to you, so it was so much fun to put wrestling moves on them, and they made a whole bunch of different characters. Series 1 in 1990 did the $1 Million Man, Macho Man, and then my brother and I had Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior. And Series 2 in 1991 later produced Big Boss Man, Jake the Snake, and the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal. There's companies today that are actually making their own versions of Wrestling Buddies, and one that was one of my favorites was called Brothers Godor, and they actually did ones of you if you sent them a photo, and this is one of me in something I actually wore. But in 1998, Toy Biz would upgrade the Wrestling Buddy for their WCW line. So at number 3, we have WCW Bashin Brawlers. This was 7 years after the original WWF Wrestling Buddies, and they had an upgrade. They had electronic noises and sounds inside, so if you squeeze their nose, they'd scream, or if you bent their knee, they'd cry out, and they did a whole bunch of characters as well. You had Hollywood Hulk Hogan, Sting, Goldberg, Macho Man, DDP, Kevin Nash, and 2 of the most rare Bashin Brawlers were Scott Steiner and Bret Hart. Number 2 goes to some characters from a show that we also probably shouldn't have been watching, but of course every kid was watching it, and that is Ren Stimpy. The dolls were made by Mattel in 1992, and these toys represented peak 90s gross out humor. You had the 2 main characters, Ren and Stimpy, and Ren was the Chihuahua, Stimpy was the cat. When you squeezed their stomach, they farted, so you can gross out your sister or your mom. But my favorite part of these plush toys were the pull strings. They weren't your typical doll pull strings. Ren, you pulled the pull string from his belly button, so it was like belly button lint. And Stimpy's pull string was out of his mouth, so you were pulling out a fur ball. Thought these were super fun, loved the farting action. Ren and Stimpy were just so cool. And an honorable mention I'll throw up on here goes to Alf. In 1986, Coleco produced their own version of Alf, or Alien Life Form, and Alf was just one of those smart-ass, funny characters. And probably if you had it as a kid and you watched the show, you knew that, you know, he had that adult humor, so it would have been so cool to have him. I think the plush toy represented the actual puppet from the show, so it would have been pretty cool to have him in your collection and just kind of make believe you were part of the family in the show. So Alf will get an honorable mention. And just for fun, another honorable mention goes to the Werebears. These were produced by Hornby in 1983. Seemingly cute and cuddly teddy bears transformed into rabid-looking creatures. They had sharp teeth and huge claws, and they were hidden underneath this hood. Now, the Terror-Teds, they were released in 1986. They were the villains to the Werebears. The only reason these are honorable mentions and not on the main list is because they were primarily released in the United Kingdom. If the concept seems familiar, that's because years later a brand of plush toys called Feisty Pets, there's these cute looking stuffed animals, but they revealed sharp teeth and angry eyes. So I bet they took some inspiration from Werebears. And at my number 1 spot goes to the Incredible Crash Dummies Crack-Ups, produced by Tyco in 1992. We haven't really talked about the Incredible Crash Dummies on the show yet, so we're going to be talking about them more, but these plush toys were fantastic. They only made 2 characters, Slick and Spin. There was a purple one and a gray one, but these were probably just so much fun because you can bash them together and then all their parts fall off. So they were a plush body with Velcro all over so you can attach their limbs and their head. And then when you threw them across the room or against the wall or against each other, their limbs would fall off. And then you can mix and match all their different limbs. So these were just so much fun, and the Incredible Crash Dummies made some awesome figures, but I think people forget they made these awesome plush toys. Alright folks, that does it with my list of 9 stuffed animals cool for dudes. Let me know down below, were there any you would have put on this list? Most of these stuffed animals had a common theme. Either you can battle with them, you can maim them, or they were simply made to gross out your mom or sister. So really lots of cool stuff back then. And let me know down in the comments which ones you had, which ones your friends had, which ones you had fun playing with. But that's all we got for now, guys. So hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, hit like and subscribe. And until the next episode, we'll catch you next time.